Hi, I'm Kyle, a tired therapist.
And I'm Jackie, also a tired therapist.
And together, we are
Two tired therapists. Welcome to the pod. Well, hello, Kyle.
Hi, Jackie.
How are you?
Tired.
Always.
Tired as always.
You gotta stay tired.
Gotta stay tired.
And petty.
And
You do have an interesting story about that. I feel like you should share, since that's going to be our new sign off.
You'll have to narrow it down for me because I'm frequently petty and...
You had told me a client had said that to you, like as a sign off, like stay petty.
Yeah, I don't remember what exactly it was, but I just remember...
You texted me a night about...
What did I say?
My pants laughing.
I slept since
you just said a client was signing off with me today, and they said stay petty.
Yeah, we were talking about... I think we were probably talking about like their spouse or something, because that's what we talk about a lot in therapy, and we drag spouses frequently in my office. And I think I was like, well, take care of yourself this week. And they're like, I will, I'll stay petty. And I was like, what? I didn't say that, but
it's so applicable to so many different situations.
Sometimes you have to. It's like that. If I don't laugh, I'll cry. If I'm not petty, I'll freak out.
It's true.
So
I love it. But
so stay petty.
Yeah, stay petty. Well, welcome to another episode of Two Tired Therapists. Mm-hmm. Kyle, what are you tired of?
Well, you know me. I'm a little I'm for the gays.
Yeah.
Right, we support.
Allegedly.
We're
not so sure.
Depending on the episode.
Right.
I'm really tired of this queer baiting, though. You know about this?
Yes, I do. I don't know much. I've read some things, but I don't know.
Well, it's this idea that like these hot like straight men will not even play roles that are gay, but like. So let me just give you some examples. So one is, what's his name? From One Direction, Harry Styles.
Yes.
He's in that.
I've heard
gay
this.
cop, which I think it's a whole show where he's like, oh, am I gay? Oh, I don't know. I've kissed a boy. Oh. Like, but I just feel like it's just like, quit dragging us. Like, quit doing this. And then the other one is, he was in the Sabrina show on Netflix. Did you watch this?
No, but I think I know. I can't remember the guy's name.
He's like a singer too. He has like a band, and so he's been like waving a pride flag on stage. But he's not gay, I don't think. But he's real hot, and he's like always has a shirt off. And it's like,
right?
What do you do? Like, quit it. Quit it.
Yeah.
Quit it.
I've seen a lot of stuff in the news recently about the queer baiting. It was mostly about Harry Styles queer baiting constantly.
It's tired. Like, if you support the gays, support the gays.
Sure.
They need it.
Sure, yes.
A lot. They need it. But we don't need
you to pretend like you are when you're not.
Right. So that's where I'm at. Queer baiting. Stop it.
Oof.
Which, you know what? I've come back to men. Here we are.
It's either flags or men.
Flags or men. Sometimes both.
You call me out about the nature. I'll just call you out about the flags and the men.
What are you tired about?
You know... I feel like I'm going to sound like a very old person when I tell you this, but I really feel like something that I'm tired of is songs that have sirens in them that make you think there's like police or fire or an ambulance behind you. Mm-hmm. I can't stand it. Mm-hmm. Do you have the same feeling about this or no? It's just, I'm so tired of it.
I don't know. I don't know that I listen to a lot. What are you listening to that's got sirens in it?
I feel like a lot of songs on the radio have this.
I feel like rap songs. That's where I think.
Yes, rap songs do have it.
Do you listen to a lot of rap?
Yeah, I do sometimes, yes. Oh. Yes, I do love Drake.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Drake is one of my favorite artists.
Oh.
I can't think of a song at the top of my head that he does this for. But I mean, like, just in general, like, I feel like when you listen to songs on the radio, there's always background stuff. What was this? Mm-hmm. There was a song recently within the last couple of years that every time I heard it, I thought there was a cop behind me, and there was no cop behind me. And I can't remember what it was off the top of my head now, but I can't stand that. It's just, I don't know. It's so much.
Well,
clearly so tired of it.
You must be doing something wrong. Guilty conscience.
I guess.
Like
I'm just driving scared shitless thinking someone's
right. Being
or
arrested.
Like, I remember one time one of those songs came on and I was like, oh, it's just the song. And then I actually like looked in my rear view and there actually was like an ambulance trying to there was an ambulance coming up and I was like, oh, okay. And I couldn't even hear the ambulance, the real life ambulance, because the song was so loud.
And you were jamming.
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm. That's all you...
Probably with your AirPods in. People do that. People do that. It's very dangerous.
I know. No, I don't do. I don't do.
Don't drive with your AirPods in or headphones of any kind.
Yeah, you're not supposed to. Yeah, no, I don't do that. But yeah, I have seen that. It's bad. Anyways,
Jackie, what are we talking about today? This is all you.
I know this is a Jackie episode. Everybody should be very excited because it's very well prepared and not at all unprofessional.
Well, I'm in for a treat.
Yes, you are. So, you and I feel like I've had this conversation a couple of times, but we've never actually like full blown discussed it, which is the difference between borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder.
So we're telling the tea today.
Yes.
We're letting the TikTokers know.
Yes, we're going to let the TikTokers know. So we haven't, when I was thinking of this episode, I thought to myself, we've not actually talked about mood disorders, which there's so many and there's so many different variations, which is, I mean, we could totally do that in the future. We just have not talked about bipolar disorder at all. But I thought, what better of a topic? Because I love to get on my soapbox.
And around the holidays, what a great time to talk about bipolar disorder. With Thanksgiving right around the corner.
Don't diagnose your friends and family, but if you see any of these signs, now you know.
Now you know.
So have you seen this misdiagnosed? Like, have you seen one diagnosed for the other or vice versa? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. I was afraid you're going to say no. No, yeah.
Absolutely. Constantly.
Do you have any thoughts and or feelings about who does the most misdiagnosing of these two diagnoses?
Well, now, Jackie, I don't. Now, hold on. I don't know
I will.
Primary care doctors?
Yes. Okay, good. We're on the same page.
We're on the same page. Absolutely.
As always.
Oh, one of I can't tell you how many times I've got, like a 16, 17-year-old who comes to me diagnosed with sometimes both.
Yes.
Sometimes a 14-year-old that has bipolar disorder. Oh my God. No.
I can't see
We're not doing that. No. Yeah, like that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Like a 7-year-old with borderline personality.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did see a chart of a client who was under the age of 16. Was given a personality disorder diagnosis, which I was very unhappy about.
Because if the kids recall from our trilogy,
our
they personality disorder trilogy, you are not supposed to. It's unethical.
Yes.
To diagnose someone with a personality disorder. Under the age of 18.
Well, I'm going to frequently reference that episode. So if you have not listened to the Cluster Bees, you may probably want to pause this, go back, listen to it again, and then come back to this because
we'll still be here.
We sure will. And it's a good. I'm not going to go in depth about borderline personality because we already did it.
We did that. Mm-hmm.
So, okay, bipolar disorder is a mood disorder. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that means it affects your mood. So this is where I think a lot of people get it twisted between borderline and bipolar because of just the nature of both of these. And I'll talk about sort of like the crossover of both. But so there's 3 different subtypes of bipolar. There's 1, 2, and then psychothymic. I'm not going to talk about all of them because it would take way too long.
Right.
But suffice it to say, bipolar, there's typically an elevation in your mood. So there's mania, which I think that is a huge misconception of a lot of different providers. They don't understand what mania is.
Right. It can look very different.
Right. Tell us about mania if you know anything about it, if you've seen a client with it or.
Well, so it can be this very euphoric, like cloud 9 on top of the world. Like I always say the opposite of depression.
Yes.
So in the depression where you're like, oh, everything sucks. Mania is like, woo, like I'm feeling great. Like everything's amazing and the world is amazing and I'm amazing and
yes.
We're not talking just I'm having a good day.
No, we're talking about I could get stabbed in the chest
and I wouldn't care.
And nothing would happen to me. I wouldn't die. I would just keep going on with my day. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or it can be very angry and irritable as well.
It can be. Most of the time, though, it's going to be that elevated mood. So I'm not going to go through all the diagnostic criteria because that would take forever. But you are right. It is the inflated sort of mood. It's the inflated self-esteem. Mm-hmm. It's racing thoughts, racing speech. You can't understand somebody. And I'm not just saying I went on a cleaning spree in my house. I'm manic.
Right. No.
Somebody who's truly manic, and I have seen truly manic people, it is a sight to behold. Because there is literally no stopping. Right. I mean, talk about talking so fast that you can't understand the person because they're tripping over their words and they don't stop.
And they're not connected necessarily.
Sometimes,
the thoughts are not always connected.
Yeah. In bipolar, you can have an element of psychosis. That does happen. But yes, mania does not mean that you cleaned really fast, or you drank a really giant iced coffee, and now you're running through Target and doing whatever you got to do.
And it's consistent.
Right.
And maybe you'll talk about this. I don't want to jump ahead.
Yes.
Are we going to talk about that?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Well, that was like literally my next sentence. So
okay.
We're still on the same page. Love it.
Because it's people will be like, oh, I'm mad and then I'm sad the next minute. No. No.
Bipolar is very much like poles, and you're in the manic state. You can be in the manic state for a couple of days, up to like a week is I think the longest.
That's a manic.
Yeah, that's
like,
manic.
Is a week.
Yeah.
And then hypomanic, which
like,
is in your bipolar 2 diagnosis.
Yeah, that's like
is
3
or 4 days.
3 to 4 days. If it's
not as intense.
If it's longer than 2 days, then they start looking. You start looking really hard at bipolar versus borderline in this instance.
Right.
But yeah, so if you have at least 3 days of elevated mood,
right, not sleeping,
right, you think that you're Jesus himself and you're coming to save us all. I mean, that is
impulsive spending is in this one. Impulsive sexual activity, reckless behavior,
like driving down the highway 120 miles an hour, no regard,
investing into a very risky like business or something.
Sure, blowing $20,000 at a casino.
Yes,
this is where this is bipolar,
But that's the consistent. Like it's not like
1 minute.
You're not up and down.
Right.
It might fluctuate, but it's
your mania may not. Your mania may fluctuate a little bit. Like you may come down slightly, but you're still going to be in that state.
Right.
The other big hallmark I always tell people about bipolar disorder is you don't feel like you have to sleep.
Right.
And a lot of people will be like, well, I'm manic. And I said, well, what does that mean? They're like, well, I sleep 8 hours. And I'm like, no. I said, when you're manic, you can't sleep at all. And it's
nor do you want to.
Right. You don't want
to. To do.
Right. And you're like rearranging your whole house. You got to feng shui it the right way.
Right.
Like it's a whole thing. So that comes up a lot with bipolar. The other thing is I don't know if you feel this way. I feel this way. This could have been what I'm tired of, but I didn't want to give away the episode. Do you ever get tired of hearing people say, I'm so bipolar?
Oh, well, yeah. Again, I think it's like, oh, I'm so
not.
sad one minute and I'm mad. And so I'm so bipolar. No, you're not.
I'm like, no, it's not.
You have poor emotional expression.
Right. Or you cannot regulate your own emotions well enough to, so yes.
Or you have a personality disorder.
Bingo. That's
if we're telling the tea.
Right. That's what we're about to talk about is me.
Perfect,
but perfect. Yeah, so I hate when I hear people say that because I'm just like, you don't know what true bipolar is, one. And two, you can't be people who are bipolar don't really think that they're bipolar. Right. They will not, I mean, it's kind of almost like psychosis in that way. Like they don't,
I'm fine.
Yeah. They're like, no, nothing's wrong with me. I love to, not sleep for 4 days and do whatever I need to do. So the anger, though, sometimes can be the distinction between a personality disorder and bipolar, though. You can be irritable when you're manic, but typically when you're manic irritable, like you're irritable because you can't, I don't know, you want to like spend $45,000 on whatever and somebody won't let you. Like typically there's that, you can't have that sort of mood, oh, I'm mad because you won't let me do this thing. Usually that's kind of how it seems. But the irritability more, in my opinion, is classified as a personality disorder than it is mania. But like I said, you can have psychosis when you're bipolar. That is really tough.
That.
Have you? Do tell.
Well, it was very interesting because I had inherited this person.
Oh, okay.
And they were pretty good. I mean, they were fine in the beginning, and I don't know what quite happened, but they had all these delusions and about like their partner, their partner, and like they were on the run because the police were out to get them, and really they weren't. Well, I mean, they were because they were trying to find this person because they were like running away. Yeah. And like one of our last interactions, they were at a payphone, and they were like, I have to take this bus to this bus, and they were like switching buses because people were after them. And
oh my!
I was like, where are you? And they're like, well, are you gonna tell the cops? And I was like, yeah, I kind of have to.
Probably.
And they were like, this is the last you'll see me. And not because they were gonna like hurt themselves, but because they were like, because I need to disappear.
Where do you find a payphone these days?
I don't know. Resourceful.
Well, I mean, they probably do exist.
Yeah, but I was like, ooh, so I'm gonna give you a referral.
You need to call this place. Yeah,
But it was like, whoa. Yeah. Because again, I had seen them when they were stable. Yeah. And like they were working on like lots of things and trauma and all that, and then all of a sudden it was like, poof. Oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Where are we going?
Yeah. Usually, though, with bipolar, sometimes there's some warning signs. It's not. I shouldn't say it's like across the board. Some people can tell their triggers and their warning signs, but a lot of times it really is very much like, oh my God, today I woke up and now I'm here. But I would see a lot, in the last several years, I saw a lot of people be like, yeah, my doctor diagnosed me with, bipolar disorder. And I'm like, oh, did they say why? No. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, well, what symptoms do you have, of that? Well, and then they couldn't describe a single symptom associated with that. And I would be sitting there and I'm like, okay, how do I delicately tell them like this maybe is a personality disorder? I did see one person who was accurately diagnosed with borderline personality disorder by her PCP, which I did supremely appreciate. And I did tell the client, like, you should stick with this PCP because I just see that a lot. People get misdiagnosed because and then they think, I can medicate. We talked about this on the borderline personality disorder episode. You can't medicate a personality disorder. I mean, you can medicate pieces of it, but you can't medicate the anger of you can't medicate that.
Well, and then it becomes difficult because if they don't have bipolar disorder and you put them on a mood stabilizer, which is what are we going to get there too?
We'll talk about meds later, but yes, you have to be really careful about medications. Yes. So,
because it's one of those people get so frustrated when they come in and they're like, well, I have bipolar and I just want to be diagnosed and get the medication. And we're like, we need to really look at that, because if we give you the wrong thing, we're going to mess you up.
And I would tell people, like, especially when I would do an intake, I'd be like, just because I'm giving you this today doesn't mean that's what your, diagnosis is forever.
That's one you have to see over time.
Diagnoses change over time. And a lot of people actually, there were times where I would tell people, like, I'm not actually going to give you this diagnosis because I don't think it's accurate personally. And, you can talk to your psychiatrist, you can talk to your therapist, and you guys can, come up with a plan of like how you want to, either get testing for this or, monitor your symptoms over time. I mean, because I just think it was so grossly misdiagnosed all the time. I mean, people just, and even like, this is not within bipolar, but I'll never forget. There was a woman I did an intake on, and oh my God, I'll never forget it. She was she had depression for sure, but her doctor put her on a stimulant. Her PCP put her on a stimulant because her PCP believed that she had ADHD, which she really didn't.
Okay.
But she was like, I'm so sad, but like, I'm doing stuff, like I can, I'm taking care of myself. I can clean my apartment. I can do all these things. And I'm like, well, you are on a stimulant.
Which affects your energy and not your mood.
Right. So I was like, you have the energy to do all these things, but inside you are still like sad. I'm like, I told her, I was like, I need you to see like a psychiatrist. Like, I'm going to refer you to one of our, and I'm like, I need you to see the psychiatrist like tomorrow, like, because I don't think you're on the right medication, which it was we could probably have another episode about medications. And even though we're definitely doctors and we should definitely be talking about medications.
Well, I mean, sometimes you wonder.
But I mean, I'll never forget that. But I think about that for bipolar. It's like these people come in, maybe they're difficult, maybe they're there's just a lot of crying, there's a lot of emotional reactivity, and then doctors are like, oh, guess what?
You're bipolar.
Here's a mood stabilizer, and now you're getting bipolar disorder as a diagnosis. And then they come in for services, and you're just like, oh no.
Because there's so many things that it can look like too, right? Like bipolar can look like ADHD.
It can.
Some people with depression can think they have bipolar because when you're super depressed and then you have like a good day, you do feel manic.
Yes.
Like, when you've been in bed for 2 weeks and then you're like, I'm going to clean the house. Like, you do feel manic.
Well, and that's the other part you have to be careful with about depression too, is, I mean, that's the other pole of bipolar, is you're either manic or have mania, and or in the bottom is depression. I mean, it may not be as hard.
Right.
Bipolar 1 is you're more manic than you are depressed. Bipolar 2 is you're more depressed than you are have mania. And then psychothymic is you kind of go between
both
the two pretty... The cycling
isn't diagnostically, you have to have had a manic phase, but you don't necessarily had to have had a depressive phase.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think
we should probably
have to get the old DSM out.
We have to bust out the DSM for this,
but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because I think the difference is bipolar 1 is you have that manic like 1 week, and then bipolar 2 is you have that hypomanic, which is
for like 3 or 4 days, and it's typically and then you're depressed for 2+ weeks usually.
Bottom out.
Yeah, so. Bipolar, I think it gets a bad rap, and it's not as common as people think it is. Truly, I mean, it's pretty. And then it really does, like we said, it takes a while for you to sort of see all the symptoms of it. Like, you can't just assume from like a first meeting that you have, like, I don't know. I would never assume somebody has bipolar disorder off a first meeting. Even if I felt like that.
They would have to be like in an active manic phase for me to be like, oh yeah.
Usually I would say, hey, I think we need to continue to assess. And I wouldn't give the diagnosis, but I would be like maybe I would say symptom of or whatever. But But then you get to borderline and they get so confused. And I think where they get confused the most is, number one is the emotional reactivity of like the borderline personality disorder and the bipolar, because it's going to look really similar.
Yeah.
But usually when you have borderline personality disorder, it's fast. It's not like days. Like, it's like you and I are talking, you say something and I'm like, guess what, bitch? It's on. Like, it's not like, it's very immediate, and then you're mad, and you're usually mad for a couple hours. It's usually no more than that. Maybe a day at the most, and then you're cool.
Yes, that emotional lability.
Yes, yes.
That is not diagnostic criteria for bipolar.
No.
You are not emotionally labile.
Yes. You say it so fancy.
Thanks.
But that's exactly what it is. I mean, I think that's where maybe PCPs get confused, is like, oh, this person is having a reaction. Oh, that's bipolar disorder. And it's really not. Right. The other symptom of borderline that I think really does kind of cross over pretty well is that impulsive and risky behaviors, because that is part of borderline personality disorder, and it's part of bipolar disorder. Right. And it's different because, for at least in my opinion, or at least what I've seen, is like in borderline, I mean, it's something that you're doing, cross whatever. Like, if you're engaging in risky behavior all the time.
Well, and it's usually more related to like self-harm, risky behavior, like
no, it's not.
Right?
The criteria for borderline personality disorder it's not related to self-harm. Oh. It's separate. So usually and this is where again, I think it gets really confused, is because sometimes with people who have borderline personality disorder, they will engage in like really like risky, sometimes promiscuous sexual relationships because they don't want to be abandoned, as we've talked about.
Superficial, yeah.
Right. So it's like a superficial relationship. They don't want to be abandoned. Then they'll have sex, or they'll do whatever. They'll have a relationship, and then the relationship will end. And that's risky sexual behavior. I mean, if you're meeting people at the bar every night, I mean, no tea, no shade, but I mean,
yeah, do what you're gonna do.
I mean, do whatever you're gonna do.
But we've all been there,
right. But it's exactly. But it's different because it's so hard. This is where I think people can get really mixed up between the two, because it can be like bipolar. But to me, bipolar, the way I've seen the manic stuff with bipolar and the risky sexual behavior, it's like they have to have sex no matter what. They don't care. I mean, it's like, I need a body, let's go.
Right. It's not, I'm trying to
right.
Fill
You're not
an
trying to have
emotional
it.
void.
Right. You're not trying to have a, like, right. I've talked to clients who were like, yeah, I had no emotional connection to this person. I didn't care. I just, I was in a manic state and I just wanted to have sex. And I'm like, oh, sure. Oh, I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
I think when you boil it down, borderline is a disorder of relationships.
Yes.
Bipolar is a disorder of mood.
Right. It's so different. I think a lot of people forget the relational piece of borderline personality disorder. And I think if people I keep saying people, but I think if like people who are going to diagnose this looked at it at that, because borderline is so relational. It is so much that versus, I mean, manic, you're not trying to, we said,
you're not manic with one person and then not the other.
Right.
Like,
right.
That's consistent.
Right. There's consistency. And then there's just, it doesn't, if I want to spend $20,000, like, sure, I'll go to a club. I'll make friends with somebody. Like, you just don't care about that. Whereas borderline, it's very much like, oh, like, I see you at the club. Yeah. Like, I'm going to go for you. We're going to like have a relationship. And then you kind of build it up in your head. And then there's, the failure of that relationship. Maybe you're like, you're the facade of what you think is going to happen. Right. And then it's a done deal. Yep. And I think I think a lot of people and I also think people are afraid of personality disorders. You ever think about that?
Well, sure. It's a
tough thing.
Taboo, right? Because you think of,
it's a tough thing.
Mm-hmm, you think of what the consequences of the label, I guess. When people see that, because I think when we've talked about this, I don't think the two of us, maybe not on air, but when you see a patient's chart, when you've not seen them physically, sometimes people look scary on paper. Sure. When you see someone who's coming to you and they're like, oh, they've been diagnosed with bipolar, they've been diagnosed with this and with that, you're like, holy moly. But then you meet with them and you're like, oh, you don't have any of those
I have a really
things.
good story about this.
Oh, please share. So
I had an offender in the prison. He was, I had read his chart. I didn't know him. I was inheriting him from somebody else who was leaving. And he had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. I believe also antisocial personality disorder. If you read his chart, you'd be afraid of him. Like he wouldn't comply with stuff. He would frequently get his cell extracted, which basically meant that like custody would have to like extract him from his cell in a forceful way.
Okay.
I'll try to be as nice about it as I can, but I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like, is a cell extraction. So he would get very combative. He would take on, custody when they would do said cell extractions. He would fight all of them, and you would read his chart, and I read his chart, and I was like, oh my God. And I'd never really seen the guy before. I'd never met him really in person. So I go down to meet him for the first time. They bring him out. Kyle, this man was like 5'0". Oh
my God.
80 pounds.
So me.
Right. Exactly. Yes. He was one of the nicest guys I worked with. Yes. Yes, he definitely had borderline personality disorder. Yes, he definitely was. If something didn't go his way, he was like, I'm gonna do something. And I'm like, well, what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
My famous story about him is that I tell people about boundaries. So when I worked in the prison, all of the guys on my caseload knew, like, if you called for me, like, it was an emergency. Like, I wasn't just going to come and if you called to see me. And so I was in my office, I was like doing my notes or something. And I got a call from the range he was on, and they were like, can you please come down here? He's asking for you. And I was like, and he never asked for me. And I was like, that's so strange. I said, I don't want to come down there because I don't think this. And they're like, no, he's like really freaking out. He wants to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So I go down there and I go to his door, and I'm like, what?
What?
Literally, I was like, what?
Do you want?
I said, what? He goes, can I have a crayon? And I said, are you shitting me right now? And he said, no, I really need a crayon. I said, are you serious? He said, yes. I said, no. And I said, I will see you next week. And I just walked off. And he was like, he didn't know what to, I mean, the next time I saw him for session, I said, let's talk about that. I was like, because that
process.
Yeah, I'm like, what was that? He was like, well, I was making this picture and I just really needed this crayon. And I'm like, the way that you came across, though, to custody staff made it seem like you were in like a legitimate
like emergency. A crisis, like you were going to end it all.
Right, and he was like, well, yeah, I was kind of going to, and I said, oh, no, we don't do that.
Crayon.
We don't do that here. No. And I said, if you ever do that again, you'll never get another crayon from me, because we could give them like crayons and stuff. It sounds really sad, but I mean, like, it's one of the things that we could give them, like, we could give them coloring pages and crayons. So again, he was like the nicest guy, but if you, like you said, if you read his chart, you'd be like terrified of him. And he was, and like I said, he definitely had borderline personality disorder. He ended up getting released and went back to society. And I don't know that he was ready for that, but I mean, and he was around the same age as I was. I mean, he was younger, but he was, you read his chart and you were like, oh.
Yeah, I had that experience this week with an intake that was coming in. They had like been to crisis in the past month and had an attempt and like all these things. And on paper, you're like, holy moly. Yeah. And even my supervisor was like, oh, this person probably shouldn't come here. And then
they come and they're fine.
And they were cool. I was like, I kind of like, they weren't going to stay with us. They had already like found a therapist and stuff. And it was actually so funny because I was like, well, why do you have this appointment then? And they're like, I was afraid you'd come get me. I was like, we don't do that.
Yeah, we don't do that here. I've had many conversations like that.
But they were super cool. But it was like on paper, I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be a hot mess.
Well,
but no, right. I mean, not to say they didn't have some like shit to work through, but
no, for sure.
I had the greatest little intake ever.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're a precious little baby, and I know you would stay with me, but onward you go.
Yeah. That's how I felt. Like I said, the one client I ever met that was correctly diagnosed with what borderline personality disorder. When they came in for an intake, they had come from crisis. There was a skerfuffle of some sort in their home that they shared with their partner, and they tried to shoot themselves. Pretty serious. I mean, they legitimately had a gun. They tried to shoot themselves, but weren't successful. And then neighbors or someone called police, and then like they got handcuffed, taken out of their home, and then to crisis. And so they were coming to get involved in services, and they were wonderful. That was one of the best intakes that I ever had. And I was talking to them, and I said, what are your diagnoses? Because I usually ask people that just to see where their insight level is, and two, just to see like what comes up. And they were like, well, they told me I have borderline personality disorder. And I said, well, what does that mean to you? Because then that's another question that you get a lot of information out of.
Right.
And they were like, well, I definitely think I have it. And then they started describing the relationship with their partner. And I was like, oh yeah, there was a lot of like, we fight a lot, and it's like, we're breaking up, and then we're not. And then when they tell me they're breaking up with me, I can't handle that. And then I like go to an extreme, and I was like, And so I was like, just writing all this down. I was like typing, I was like, and they were, I mean, the insight was good, but I mean, if you read this person's chart, you'd be like, oh my God, this person is going to go home and maybe potentially kill themselves.
Right. And I think that's a big thing in in the therapy world, because you see, like, again, with that person I talked about, like they got every diagnosis. I think it was like bipolar, they were depressed, they were anxious, they had ADHD, they had trauma, and you're like, it can't be. It can't be all these things. Like, we have to narrow some of these down.
Have you ever worked with someone, coworker, hopefully not boss, but coworker, that said they would never see somebody with personality disorder, or they would never work with somebody with personality disorder?
No one's jumping to mind.
I have.
But I'm sure people do. And
I have.
But my question is like, then what do you do in this field? TBH. Because how do you do that?
I worked with somebody at the prison who famously all the time said that they would not work with anybody with personality disorder. I think that they purposely sometimes were incompetent because you couldn't not get somebody with a personality disorder. Like, it's pretty rare.
Right.
And then there
were
those of us who had, the majority, I was at one point like a 75-25 split of like personality versus SMI. And so I think they were purposely incompetent sometimes when they did have to have somebody with a personality disorder. And then they would like come to me and be like, what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, it's really not too difficult, but you just have to do what you say what you do,
right,
and hold boundaries. And
sure,
some people struggle with that,
right? And I think with some of the certain personalities, they are hard.
Yeah,
and they're
draining.
For sure. It's draining to work with personality disorders.
Well, and it can be like that too when you have people with mood disorder. I mean, even like bipolar.
Right.
I have worked with many of people who have bipolar, and it can be tough.
Yeah,
especially if they don't realize that they're manic or they're. So it's
one of those of like, I kind of see it as like with substance use of that, like it's going to be a struggle sometimes.
Oh, like, for sure.
You're going to have a relapse. Like you're probably going to have a manic phase, even if you're aware or medicated. And we just sometimes have to go, how do we have a manic phase safely?
Right.
How do we safely be manic?
Yeah, exactly that.
And that doesn't always feel like therapy.
No.
Because you're not fixing, quote, them.
Well, and some things can't be fixed, right? I mean, there's just some things like, it's kind of like with psychosis, like you can't, for a lot of people with psychosis, the best thing is their psychosis doesn't affect their day-to-day functioning as badly, but that's the same thing for the manic stuff. It's like if you're going to be manic, fine, we can't get over that, but you can't be, running down the street butt naked and trying to have sex with anybody who comes across your path.
Not around here.
Not around these parts.
Maybe if you go to Folsom Street or something, you can do it, but...
If for those who know what that is, yes.
Yes. Sorry, that's a gay thing. You guys aren't gay. Sorry, straights.
Or if you're not an ally, you don't know I know exactly what that is.
So sorry, flops.
Yeah. Well, let's take a break.
Yeah, let's take a break.
And then we'll talk maybe a little bit about like treatment. And then we'll have a little fun little Thanksgiving edition of Fetch or Flop.
We'll be right back. And we're back.
So treatment for bipolar. Well, we talked about it already, so there's spoilies already happened.
So sorry.
was medication.
Yeah.
And we talked about mood stabilizers.
This is one of those you kind of have to. This is
like almost like psychosis. Like there has to be a medication component
at
to
some
it.
point. Yeah.
But it's mood stabilizers, and there's two that I think are the most common mood stabilizers: lithium and Depakote. I don't know what their fancy names are, and again, we are not doctors, so please do not take medical advice from us.
Please don't.
But lithium is the heavy duty one where you have to get like levels. And
I think it's the gold standard too, still, isn't it?
I think it is too. I think Depakote is a little bit more, I've seen it used more for people who have negative side effects to lithium. Like they won't keep you on lithium, but they'll move you to Depakote. There's other ones too. It's not just those two, but those are like the two, I would say the two most popular medications for bipolar disorder.
Lithium's a hard one though, because you have to go, I think it's weekly. Don't you have to go in weekly to get your levels checked? It's
pretty frequent. Yeah. And you have to be careful of like lithium toxicity and if you're taking too much of it. And I don't know if it happens with lithium, but I know if you take certain antipsychotics, possibly with lithium, if you drink too much water, there's water toxicity. That's a thing too. Yeah. So, but I mean, if you're looking at bipolar, you're talking about mood instability, you're going to be looking at some type of medication to sort of even out your levels.
Well, and like we were talking about earlier, this is why this diagnosis is so important for us to get right. Because like we said, if if we're like, oh, sure, you got bipolar, and then we give you that mood stabilizer, and really you have, depression or borderline personality or something else, and I don't remember what it was. Is it if you give a mood stabilizer, it sends them to a manic phase?
It can.
Or because then the opposite is true as well. If you give someone who has borderline personality a like antidepressant, it sends them into like a depressive episode or something.
I can't remember. You're on.
I don't remember the order.
Yeah, I don't remember the order either. But yeah, you have to be extremely careful because
right.
Certain medications can affect you negatively to where
right.
it can trigger something very serious.
Right.
If you also just in practice, if you have borderline personality disorder and you get a mood stabilizer, it's really not going to do much for you.
No,
it's almost going to. And that's where you see people coming in because they're like, oh, I'm on this medication. Right. I am bipolar and it's not working. And I'm like, oh, like that's
or
a concern.
They've been on 17 different medications and they're like, none of them have worked.
That's a red flag.
That is a red flag.
If you,
absolutely.
Yes, that is a pretty strong indicator that you have a personality disorder if you've tried every medication.
I had a patient the other day. I was looking up some things and they had tried 20 medications.
Oh my, that's a lot.
None that worked. And all different kinds, like all kinds of different kinds. And they have a personality disorder, but I was like, wow. Wowsies.
Yeah. Wowsies. And like we said before, there are some people out there, doctors, therapists, psychiatrists who will give medications. Like, well, therapists can't give medications, but
sometimes I wish we could.
Some states though, you can.
I would do it. Absolutely,
you would.
100%.
I would not. I would not.
I wouldn't do like little Lexapro, little
sure.
Zoloft. I'll give you a little bit of that, but I'm not going to give you like. We're not doing any Xannies.
No, I don't. I wouldn't want to do it just for the sheer fact of.
But for those people who have like low, I don't want to say low symptoms, but like mild symptoms, where let's not.
Your global functioning is like a 60.
Right. Let's not give you to a med provider where I know I can give you a little Lexapro.
Yeah, and it'll be fine. Yeah.
And when it gets more complicated, no.
No, we have to refer you out.
We're gonna refer you out now. So no, I think I would totally do it. 100%.
I would not.
Absolutely.
Mm-mm.
Absolutely.
Mm-mm.
I love that stuff though. I wanted to be a doctor, but I don't do like poop and pee and throw up. I can't do that. I can't do it.
I am a fainter at the doctor, so I could never be a doctor. Lots of women in my family are nurses that I think that was probably a good career choice for me at one point, but I can't even. For the longest time, if I have to give blood, I have to lay down. Like they have to take it while I'm laying down. Yes, and they give me juice afterwards, and I love it.
Interesting. No, I can't. The throw up is the big one. I can't do that.
I used to.
If anyone's like, I'm gonna throw up, I'm like, get the fuck away from me. Because I can't. I'll be done.
That's how producer
I'll be done for the day.
That's how producer Justin. No, that doesn't bother me. But yeah, when I used to have to get shots, I used to faint 100%. Yeah, and then I had to start getting allergy shots, and then that took that away, thankfully. So like now I can get a shot and not like be out of commission for an hour. So
just to reiterate, don't take medical advice from Jackie or myself.
As you've heard
us giving today.
But yeah, that's any lasting thoughts about borderline and bipolar? We talked a lot about lots of different things, but I don't know if you have any more thoughts.
I mean, I think for me, it's when people come in my office and they're like, oh, I want the right diagnoses. I'm like, yes, and it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Like it does because we need to know what we're dealing with. But at the end of the day, we don't need to fit all these boxes of like, oh, borderline says I'm this and this and this. Because again, people don't often fit into those boxes.
Right.
You may have borderline traits, but only have one symptom.
Yeah.
But it still be interfering with your relationships.
Yeah.
So if we went by checking the boxes, insurance would say, oh, nope, they don't have borderline.
Yeah.
Send them on their way.
Yeah.
So we don't want to get caught up in the label.
Right.
We can have the label to name it to tame it.
Yeah. Sure.
To quote our dear friend.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
We can name it to tame it. And then after that, it's, let's focus on the taming. We don't need to keep naming it.
Right.
Necessarily.
Yes.
So.
Agreed.
So, yeah, I think stop saying that you're bipolar because you get mad in 2 seconds. Stop that.
I'm so bipolar.
Yeah,
I'm
stop
like,
that.
No, you're not.
And
Please
if you're
stop.
wondering, talk to your local therapist.
Yes, don't go to a doctor and say I think I'm bipolar because they may or may not give you that diagnosis and they may or may not medicate you.
Or go to them and say I think I have bipolar. Can you refer me to my local mental health agency?
Sure. Yes, and you
don't ask your local doctor.
I feel like this is like like a Bash Doctors episode between you and I, but I mean,
I'm just, yeah.
I'll just say this.
It's a mixed bag.
A person who specializes in general medicine is not going to be able to tell you a lot of probably good information about mental health because that's not their specialty. No. So go to somebody, a psychiatrist. I would rather you see a psychiatrist.
But they can give you a referral for that. So
sure.
Tell them that. And then when they're like, well, I think you have, no. Shh. I didn't ask you.
It's quiet time.
It's quiet time in the office.
I love it. Well, guess what it's time for?
It's time for Fetch or Flop.
But this is Thanksgiving edition.
Oh my gosh, I'm scared. Is it like Thanksgiving, like colonize the colonizer thing? Or?
Oh, no.
Okay.
We're talking about, to me, well, I won't ignore the
plight.
The really terrible genocide of Thanksgiving if you really, look into it.
Yeah, don't cancel us.
I treat Thanksgiving as like a time to give thanks and, to eat a lot of food. I ignore I don't want to say I ignore, but I ignore all of the, negative connotations with Thanksgiving while also fighting all of that. So anyways, this is Thanksgiving food edition.
I'm ready. It's funny because you said these will all be fetches for you, and I have a feeling they're all gonna be flops for me. Because Thanksgiving is my least favorite holiday. I know.
Hater. Okay. Mashed potatoes.
Oh, fetch.
That is so fetch.
Yeah. Well, you know me. I like a potato in any form.
Yes.
I could probably eat a raw potato. Put a little ketchup on it. I'd be good to go.
I could probably eat a raw potato too. Mm-hmm. Mac and cheese.
Yeah, fetch.
Ooh, there's a little hesitation on that.
Well,
it's also a big
depends.
fetch for me.
It depends.
On what?
On who makes it and how they make it.
Okay. What's your favorite way that mac and cheese is made?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have a specific way. It's just some people think they know how to make it, and it's just not good.
Okay.
And you gotta put ketchup on it too.
Oh, producer Justin had a very visceral reaction.
I'm sorry.
I used to put ketchup on my mac and cheese when I was a kid.
I'm from the Midwest. You have to put ketchup on your...
I used to put ketchup on my mac and cheese. We're about to get canceled.
We're getting canceled from our producer, so it's fine.
It's fine. Green bean casserole.
Oh, fetch. That's usually what I make for Thanksgiving.
Sweet potato pie.
Flop.
Yeah. I love sweet potatoes. I do not like a sweet potato pie.
I like sweet potatoes. Flop.
You don't like sweet potatoes? Oh, okay.
No.
Pecan pie. Pecan pie.
Flop.
See, to me, it's a fine.
Yeah.
It really depends on who makes it and how they make it.
Gotta have pumpkin.
I didn't do pumpkin because I knew that was going to be
a
fetch for both of us.
That's a fetch.
Last one. Ready? This is not a pie theme one.
What is it?
Cranberry jelly.
Flop.
Yeah. Hate it.
Flop.
Cannot.
We should have Thanksgiving together. We like all the same things.
Next time we're here, we'll have to have you come over. I can't. It's. I was going to ask about turkey, but I'm like, you're vegetarian, so
flop.
there's a flop for you.
Even when I ate meat, I didn't like it.
Do you have anything like a main dish for Thanksgiving, or like I don't know what your traditions are?
So, growing up, my parents don't like turkey either. So we were always a ham household. We had ham.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
So normally what we do is really just have a bunch of sides. Like,
that's not bad. That's basically what Thanksgiving is. Yeah,
because they don't really like turkey anymore. And I think sometimes they'll bring like ham, but normally we have like green bean casserole. And my mom makes this really good, like, it's like a 7-layer dip, but it's like 2 layers. It's like sour cream and salsa and I think refried beans.
Oh, like a taco dip?
So good. So she'll make that. Well, rolls, green bean casserole, mac and cheese. Oh, my dad makes scalloped potatoes from like homemade.
Oh my god,
that's so good.
That's good. Yeah.
So we have like a lot of that. Sometimes they'll have ham or they'll have something, but we just kind of munch.
I mean, Thanksgiving is 95% sides. I mean, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I will just say, producer Justin makes the whole thing for the most part. Yeah. So I contribute nothing except for pouring wine.
That sounds well.
Don't shake. Producer Justin just shook his head like, yes, Jackie doesn't do anything for Thanksgiving, but
there's a domestic dispute happening currently.
Once again,
yet again, every time.
Well, that was fun. Well, I do want to tell everybody who's listening out there to leave us an actual review and like type one out and not just give us a star, please. Yeah. Our life depends on it.
Truly.
It really does.
It really does. We're trying to get famous and quit our jobs.
If you know somebody who would enjoy this podcast, you can surely tell them to listen, and you can get this podcast really anywhere, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts.
If anyone you think might be borderline or bipolar, maybe you share this with them.
Sure. And we'll just say hello. We're glad to have you here.
We're glad to have you here.
And if you have any episode ideas, or you would like to send us, like a fan mail or hate mail, we'll accept too. We'll probably read it though. You can email us
we'll put you on blast.
Right. You can email us at twotiriredtherapists@gmail.com. We definitely check that all the time. So
That's 2 TWO, tired therapists.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And on that note,
it's been great.
It has been great.
Wonderful.
It's been a wonderful time.
Well, we hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving.
And, the holiday season is approaching.
It is.
This is the fun time of year where everybody has to do family.
Maybe we'll talk about boundaries.
Sure.
I don't know.
Coping skills.
Holiday fun things. I don't know.
Maybe you'll
have to keep listening.
You'll have to stay tuned. And in the meantime, you'll need to stay tired.
And petty.